What's going on YouTube? It's Ben from JK Gear and Gadgets. So do a video on a slave cylinder, how to change it, why you would need to change it, and some few tips on a JK 07 or 2007 to 2017 if you have a manual transmission. So a quick backstory. Ended up changing out my clutch with a center force, dual friction clutch and flywheel, just because I definitely wanted to upgrade. It's still had the factory clutch. I'll do a video on that soon. So far I really like it. I'm doing the break-in period. But I did that like 2 days before Thanksgiving, and we drove down to visit family. And of course, after the install, I found out that the slave cylinder crapped the bed too. So of course, last minute, I called up all auto parts stores around the area, and none of them had it in stock, except for CarQuest. So I went to CarQuest, grabbed a slave cylinder, and installed it. But I'll talk about that here in a minute. Slave cylinder, what it does when you push in the clutch pedal, it actually disengages the clutch down here. So let's look at where it is. They're relatively cheap and easy to change out. These are external slave cylinders. Let's see, where the heck is it mounted? Right here, right there on the transmission driver side. The 2 bolts here are 13mm, and on this one is the one I got from CarQuest, which I don't recommend. As you can see, the line coming in is on the top, and the bleeders on the side are on the bottom, which makes it incredibly hard to bleed. But that's where it's mounted. To change this out, take it out, take your 2 13mm bolts off, come over here, disconnect the transfer case shifter. So all you do for this green clip, push this in and pop it out. Super simple. And then there's the bushing. Sorry, I'm going to do a little inversion here. You might not be able to see it, but that bushing right there, you just pop off with a you just pry this whole linkage off with a flathead screwdriver. And then I can show you the rest up there with the new slave. But like I said, I installed that, and with the bleeder line on the bottom, it makes it very, very hard to bleed. So I ended up buying this one off Amazon. It's a Dorman. I think it was like 30 bucks. This looks exactly like the OEM one. I think at all the auto parts store they wanted 90 bucks for one. But so let me go back and let's explain this. So this is where the hydraulic line's coming in, and this is the bleeder. So when it sits inside the bell housing or the transmission, the bleeder right there is going to be sitting at the top. Also, the other one down there had a screw bleeder. This one you turn by hand, so it makes bleeding it a lot easier. So I definitely recommend getting this one on Amazon. It's cheaper than all the auto parts stores, and I mean, sure, you can go ahead and go to Advance and get the one for 90 bucks, but definitely skip the CarQuest one, which is weird because CarQuest and Advance have the same thing. So when you get it, you're going to take this cap off, and to actually install this, take the 2 bolts out. You're going to pull this metal tab back, and yank it down from the line. One thing that you will need to make sure you have is on the old line or the old slave. Let's pretend this is the line that's connected to the master cylinder. There's going to be an O-ring and then a little plug that slides on this. If you don't have that little plug, it's probably either going to be stuck inside the old slave or on the line. You need to make sure you get that off, otherwise it's going to leak. And to install this back on the line, pull that metal tab out with some pliers and simply press it on until you hear that click, and push the metal tab back in. As for bleeding these, super simple. As long as you have one like this. What I did before I mounted it, came in here, and if you don't already know, this is your where your brake fluid and clutch fluid both go. Same reservoir. It is baffled though, so just make sure you don't run out of fluid while you're doing the bleeding process. But what you're gonna do is take the cap off, fill it up to the top, hook your line up, install. Don't put the bolts in yet, but you're gonna sit under the Jeep with this facing down and slowly push this push it in. Slowly push it in. All the bubbles are going to rise. The bubbles are going to come out the top. You're going to do that like 20 times. Nice and slow. After that's done, snake this into the snake it into the transmission. After that, you're going to use the bleeder valve right there, just like bleeding your brakes. Somebody in the Jeep, slowly pumping the clutch, holding it to the floor, turn the bleeder valve, let all the air and fluid come out, close it, so release the clutch, just like the brakes. What you have to do this a few times, just because the bubbles are so small. Do it, probably 10 times. Stop, let it settle for 30 minutes. Go back and do it again. Do that a few times. If it still doesn't feel too solid, you probably have to let it sit overnight. Drive it for a little bit if you can, and then come back the next day and bleed it again. After a few times you repeat that process, it's going to be nice and stiff. So yeah, it's a very easy job to do. Just make sure you get a good slave cylinder that has the bleeder on the top opposed to the bottom. So yeah, I mean, that's about it. Make sure while you're bleeding it that you don't run out of brake fluid. And yes, it's .3, just exact same as your brake fluid, so cheap and easy. You could, if your slave's going out, you'll know by, if you pull this off, it can be leaking out of the boot here. There's a seal in there, so it shouldn't bypass to the boot. If your brake fluid's running low, or if it's slowly dropping, you could have a leaky slave. If you have a soft brake pedal, or a squeaky brake pedal, or not brake pedal, clutch pedal, could be from the slave. So this one doesn't make much noise. Also, you'll notice, if it is leaking, the crack right there between the belt housing and tranny, you'll have brake fluid dripping from there. So any of those, and you'll need to change your slave out. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and subscribe, and hopefully soon I'll be doing a video on the performance and how I like the new Center Force clutch kit. So stay tuned. Thanks guys. Bye.